Welcome back to Time Out with the Sports Doctor podcast, where life, sports, and medicine intersect. We're very glad that you continue to support this podcast. You can get the information on any platform where podcasts are played, as well as getting the video content on YouTube. But if you want to just get one place to find all the content, go to my website at drderrick.thesportsdoctor.com, and you will find everything on that website. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. So welcome back to another episode of Time Out with the Sports Doctor. This, of course, is a special edition. You see I have a little special garb on to celebrate fathers. So I've seen a lot of the different posts and reels where, we were advertising expensive diamonds and $300 roses for Mother's Day. And of course, for Father's Day, we have our buy one, get one free polos. But special shout out to all the fathers out there. To all, not only fathers, but coaches, uncles, and just men in general who are really filling in the gaps for many people who might have a fatherless home. So happy Father's Day to you. And since it's Father's Day, I even messed up on this. I was thinking that I was 2 weeks away from my 2-year anniversary, but officially launched on 6/20/2021. So here we are, Father's Day of 2023. So this podcast is officially 2 years old. And wow, a lot has changed, not only in my personal life, but in the world over these last 2 years. And I'm just really grateful for the ride, really grateful to be here with you each and every week. And I hope that this content blesses you, but it's definitely, helped me with growth and helped me with a lot of things that I'm dealing with in my personal life. So I really appreciate this community. That's always been the key, was to be able to grow not only a podcast, but a community where we could come together to discuss pertinent issues, come together to share information. And that's truly what it's turned into. So as we move forward on the podcast, we're going to have a lot of exciting things, a lot of new partnerships that we're working on to be able to give you the content that you need, because we're sticking to the main pillars of strengthening your mindset, of helping you grow your assets and help you achieve whatever level of success that you want for your life. So we're continuing with the same thing. Nothing's changed, even though we change some factors, but we stay with the pillars. All right. So what we're going to do today is go back to an episode that I released about 14 months ago, and it was Getting Unbusy, talking about how to live your life with purpose, productivity, and peace. And that was the first book review that I did. This book right here, Getting Unbusy, by Garland Vance. And this is the 5 Steps to Kill Busyness. This was a game changer. And of course, here we are a year later, my world has shifted. Actually, at the time when I released this podcast, I hadn't even started. I believe we were just about to start spring training at Jackson State. And now here I am as a full-time employee and have recently made this move. So I thought that for me, it's time to revisit some of those principles, because some things that I'll talk about in this episode, I can feel that I'm starting to lose touch of a little bit. And I'm not going to ruin it before we get into it, but let me know what you think about this episode, and does it relate to you? I know I got a lot of feedback when I released it the last time, because busyness is something that's glorified in our culture, but it's not necessarily something that is tied to productivity, and definitely not something that's tied to a healthy living the fullness of your life and being able to connect with people and connect with family and everyone else. So without further ado, we'll get into this episode. Once again, happy Father's Day to all the men, all the fathers out there, all the people who are even filling in the gap as fathers. I salute you. And until later, enjoy this episode. So one thing I want to speak with you today is about something that's been kind of heavy on my mind. I listened to another colleague's podcast a few weeks ago, and this episode really touched me, even to the point that the topic that he was talking about, I went and researched it, and he was talking about a book. I actually went through and immediately downloaded the book and listened to it on Audible. And I've actually at this point gone through it twice because this is something that really touched me. So it's about the topic of being busyness. So busyness is something that I guess from a cultural standpoint, I would say that we kind of almost glorify being busy, not necessarily being productive, but just being busy. So I'm going to talk to you about the next 15, 20 minutes or so. I'm not preaching to you. Trust me, I am really talking to myself. So this is something that I'm really trying to get to work on and really trying to get into my spirit. So, I'm doing this episode so I can go back and listen to it, and hopefully it'll help someone else as well. So the topic, as I said, was busyness. So the name of the book and the author of the book is Dr. Garland Vance. The name of the book is Getting Unbusy. And the book is really talking about just being busy and kind of glorifying busyness. So busyness is defined as when your commitments exceed your capacity. So when your commitment exceeds your capacity. Now, this doesn't mean that you're doing bad things, because many times we're overcommitted with doing good things. And many times we feel that the being busy is important to be meaningful, or it's important to wear it as kind of like a badge of honor. Have you ever felt like when, even if you're busy or not, say even if you're having the slowest week ever, and someone come up to you and say, "Hey man, how are things going?" Have you ever felt the need to just say, everything's going great. I'm busy, but everything's going great. So sometimes I feel personally that I just default to say I'm busy. And I guess that's because I'm just so used to being busy. If I'm not busy, then it feels like something's wrong almost. Or do you ever say, I'm busy, but I'm a good busy, so it's okay? So in this book, Garland Vance speaks about how busyness is not good and how it actually does not lead to productivity, and how busyness really can even be a stressor in our lives. It's poor for our health, it's poor for those around us, and how being busy can affect not only you, but it affects everyone that you lead, from your coworkers to your children, to your relationships, to your family. So as we get more responsibilities, in my mind, I need to be more efficient. So what I'm really focusing on is, how do I become more efficient? How do I alleviate things that are not important? And how do I make time for things that are really important in me achieving my goals and dreams? So let's just kind of talk about a couple of things that were brought up in the book. So one thing, when you hear the word busy, or when I hear the word busy, or that I have too many things that I need to accomplish, the first thing that my mind goes to is that I need to be a better manager of my time. So I need better time management skills. But he negates this thought. And he says that if the problem is having too much to do, then doing more is never the answer. So if the problem is having too much to do, then doing more is not the answer. So you don't need to learn how to manage your time better. You need to learn how to manage your amount of commitments that you take on. So the only way to not be overly busy is to get rid of some of your commitments. So what are some of the signs of being too busy? Do you always feel exhausted? Do you feel forgetful? Do you feel like you're not able to focus, that you're not truly paying attention on any one task because your mind is always on the next task or something that you need to do? Are you experiencing headaches, fatigue, migraines? Is that, especially if that's not something that you normally have? Are you having trouble sleeping? One thing, when I'm really busy and I have a lot of things on my mind, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and my mind just seems to be racing, and have trouble getting back to sleep because I'm literally trying to solve all the problems or thinking about what I need to do the next day, in the middle of the night. As I mentioned before, busyness
is not because you're doing bad things. Busyness can be an overcommitment to too many good things. This is one thing that really hit home to me, is that busyness will keep you from achieving your dreams. Now, why is that? Because busyness can make you sacrifice your passions and your priorities on the altar of good commitments. As I mentioned, it's not about doing too many bad things. It's not because you're out running the streets or out, doing bad things. It's because you want to be present all the time, maybe at work. You want to make every meeting. You want to make every practice for your kids. You want to make, you want to make everybody else happy by always being present. So, but you could be sacrificing your dreams. So is it really worth it? So I'm going to say that again. Busyness makes you sacrifice your passions and your priorities on the altar of good commitments. So that one stung a little bit for me. And it also leads to feelings of stress, overwhelm, and exhaustion. So he mentioned busy people to hoarders, kind of a comparison to hoarders. So, we've all seen probably an episode or two of a hoarding show, and it always seems just ridiculous. Like, how does this person live in an atmosphere where they can't even walk in their front door because they've collected all these goods or all these things, material things that keep you from even being able to walk through your house? And it's hard to connect because that's never been an issue for me. But in this book, Dr. Vance compares a hoarder to someone being too busy. So a hoarder collects items, where someone who's overly busy collects commitments. And then, the connection is that someone who's overly busy refuses to purge activities, where a hoarder refuses to purge items or personal items. So it's not much difference. I can definitely see the connection. And one thing that I noticed too, when I get really busy, I have a hard time of staying organized. I have a hard time anyway, just kind of on a personal tip, of parting with things. I love to collect memorable items, even as crazy as receipts. Like, I might need this receipt. I might take it back. I might not. Do I need it for tax purposes? I always tend to hold on to receipts. And then my wife always picks on me because, I have all these things from my childhood that has value. But what is the true value if it's keeping you from being organized or keeping you from even being able to find, your day-to-day things, your wallet, your keys, your phone? One thing I noticed that when I'm really busy, I have a hard time of focusing even on tasks like that. So, and that's always frustrating. So busyness clouds your judgment, and it also keeps you from having clarity. And clarity is important in achieving your dreams, as well as important to helping you be productive. So those are just some of the, ill effects of being overly busy. So now that we've talked about some of the reasons or some of the ways to see that, hey, I might be overly busy and busyness might be a problem in my life. So one thing we like to do here on this show, we like to work on your mindset, as well as give practical tips to help you be more productive, help you be successful in whatever you want to achieve. So I'm not going to leave you alone with just feeling bad saying, yes, that's me, I'm too busy. Let's talk about some things that we can do to try to correct that busyness. So number one, you have to decide if busyness is worth it. So like we mentioned before, some of the side effects that busyness might cause in your life. Is it worth it to truly just try to hold on to all these commitments if it's hurting you, if it's bad for your health, if it's bad for your family, bad for your coworkers, bad for those that you're leading? So after you decide whether or not you want to get rid of busyness, you have to deconstruct some of the false narratives that you're telling yourself about business, and kind of accept that, hey, this is an issue, this is a problem, that if I don't rid myself of this problem, it's going to affect me in the long term. And then you have to construct some new ideas and new thinking, and then draw others in, draw your coworkers in, draw your family members in. So the business vortex that he talks about is hurry, worry, and scurry. So always, if you feel like during your day, you're always rushing from one commitment to the next. When you schedule meetings and give yourself no time in between, one meeting ends at 12:30 and you should be walking into the other meeting at 12:30. Things, when you make your schedule that tight and don't allow for um, anything to go wrong, to get caught at a red light, to need to get gas. If you forget your cell phone and have to double back, when you book your schedule that tight, you can always count on something, going array. And now you're trying to rush from the one thing, and now you're 15 minutes late, and now the rest of your day is going to be ruined because you're just going to be worried about the next commitment, scurrying around, trying to get to whatever you have to do. So one way to combat busyness is to schedule for mishaps in your day, to leave 15 minutes in between one meeting and the next, just in case it runs over a little bit. To actually plan in and plug in time to check your email, to check your phone. If you need to make a phone call, actually put that in your schedule. One funny example that he used, for instance, if you have a doctor's appointment and you having a doctor's appointment at 11 o'clock and you schedule 30 minutes on your schedule for this doctor's appointment. Now, when's the last time you've been to the doctor and got in and out in 30 minutes? Probably never. But you got you said amen too quick to that. So for instance, if you go to a doctor and he might be running behind, or I might need to get some special tests done. So instead of scheduling a 30, 45-minute period of time, put in a 2 or 3 hour block. Or if you have to go across town and traffic might be bad, do you want to have to try to drive 80, 90 miles per hour to make it? Or do you want to make yourself give a little cushion just in case you run into traffic? So that's one way to try to keep from being too busy. The other thing is that you have to replace inhibiting thoughts that you might have or beliefs with new empowering truths. So write down thoughts that make you feel trapped. Do you feel like I need to do more to be more? Or do I need to get more to try to achieve a certain level? So if these are some of the thoughts, you have to combat those with positive things, and this is where affirmations may come in. I am enough simply because I exist, not based off what I achieve. That you're not who you are. I mean, you are not based on what you achieve. You are not based on your status. You are enough just by being a human being. So some of the bad habits that lead to busyness, kind of that we talked about, and this is one that I'm really bad at, and this is one that really kind of a gut punch, is that defaulting to yes without even considering no. So many times when someone, hey, will you serve on this committee? I just want to say yes so bad that I'll usually make a way to say yes. So one way that you can do to combat, if you have that similar problem to me, is default to no and then defend to yes. So if, hey, can you be on this committee? No, I can't, but let me check and see. I'll think about it. So if you are someone who just reflexively says yes, then try to default to no, and then make sure that this is something important enough that it means enough to you. Is that something that's going to bring you value as well before you really accept it? So that's one big default to no instead of just always saying yes, and because saying yes will easily keep you overcommitted. And then also, if you live without boundaries, for instance, in your work day. So if you say, hey, I'm going to just go to work and I'm going to stay at work until I finish. If there's no definite end point to your day, that can lead you to being overcommitted. Or if, now we live in this technology era where you can even do telehealth from a medicine standpoint, or from a work standpoint, from a corporate standpoint. You have work email on your personal phone. You have work email. So even when you're on vacation, you can still be plugged in to your job. Seems like every time we go on vacation, it's not necessarily me, but my wife seems to always get an orthopedic complaint or an orthopedic emergency via text. So it's always, sorry to bother you, but could you please ask your husband, could he see me on Monday? Or are you guys around? My child just fell off the merry-go-round. Not merry-go-round. I guess most of those have been taken off the playground, but you get my point. There seems to always be an acute injury as soon as we leave town. And if we were disconnected, we wouldn't even worry about it. And we wouldn't know about it. And the person who's trying to get help would find another way. So that's one thing. I often feel that if I don't do it, then it won't get done. But truly, if you don't do it, they'll figure out a way to do it. So there's an interesting term that I learned was Parkinson's law. Never really heard of this before, but it says work expands to fill the time allotted. Work expands to fill the time allotted. So if I say I'm going to work from 8 to 4, I'm going to have enough work to fill up that time slot. If I say I'm going to work from 8 to 8, I'm going to have enough work to fill up that time slot. So if you do not give yourself boundaries, then you will find enough work, or you will not be as efficient or as focused during your work period. Or if you're more focused, if you give yourself a definitive time or a period to work in, you might even find that you'll be more efficient and more focused. So as I mentioned before, one way of kind of decluttering your work day is by designing space in your calendar for emergencies. Put 15 minutes in between appointments, put a time block in for your workouts, even put a time block in for planning your day, and kind of going back, reflecting over your day, and thinking about things that you need to do in the future. And also, one thing that I never do is schedule white spaces in my calendar. And what I mean by that is taking a day where you just reflect and plan, where you absolutely have nothing planned on your schedule. And in this book, Getting Unbusy, they made a recommendation that at least every 4 to 6 weeks, have a day where you do absolutely nothing but plan and reflect or relax. And then one thing too is, what about your vacations? When you go on vacation, are you relaxing, or do you come back home from your vacation more tired, more fatigued, worn out, always saying, hey, I need a vacation from my vacation? So I know I'm definitely guilty of that. Most of our vacations seem to be very packed, trying to do better with sometimes just going to disconnect. But when you have 3 kids and, have to get back to work, it seems that you try to cram as much in as possible. So that's one reason why on this show, we often talk about financial freedom, because financial freedom leads to time freedom. So if you have financial freedom, you might not have to worry about a 3 or 4 day vacation. You might be able to afford to take an extra week or 2 off. So it doesn't always seem like you're just rushing out of town, rushing back in town, and then having to go back to work. And as we know, anytime you take time off, you're going to pay for it when you get back. So kind of the take home point behind all of this is that you want to live a life on purpose, have a purposeful life, have a productive life, but have peace. So you want to discover your true purpose. You want to be productive, but you want to do it in a peaceful manner. So that's really the reason why the focus is so much on getting unbusy. Because if you're just running from one thing to the next, the hurry, worry, and scurry keeps you from having true peace, and it keeps you from being productive. So I know that I have a lot of things that I want to accomplish outside of the field of medicine, from investments, real estate investing, public speaking, this podcast. So if I'm juggling all these things, then I have to get really focused on trying to eliminate some things that are not productive, or that are not really adding value to my life, to my family. So if I don't do that, I'm just going to be overwhelmed. And when I'm overwhelmed, I'm not focused, I'm irritated, I'm not productive. My mind is clogged. So clarity, if I don't have clarity, I don't have productivity. So this is one thing that I'm really focused on my life as I take on new things, that I'm starting to eliminate some of the other commitments in my life. So things that will suffer if you do not get unbusy are your relationships with family, friends, relationship with God. One of the things that I noticed that when I get really busy, I don't do my devotionals the way I want to. I don't pray the way that I want to, the way that I know I need to stay focused. Also, your recreation. First thing that goes, get really busy, stop working out, stop doing the things that energize me, things that keep me healthy, and then rest. Of course, like you said, if my mind's running all the time, waking up in the middle of the night, going to bed late, and then waking up fatigued, waking up tired. So plugging in those rest days for physical rest, for mental health, for mental rest, as well as physical rest are very important. And then scheduling time to reflect. So in sports, you play a game, but before you go to the next game, what do? You review the game film from the previous game so you can make corrections, so you can be more efficient. So we need to do that same thing in life. We need to review what's going well, what's not going well, so we can make an adjustments. But when you're just going from one task to the next, you don't really have time to do that. So our dreams are being affected by busyness. So what's the difference between a dream and something that's a priority? So a dream is a long-term desire without a plan. A dream is a long-term desire without a plan or without a deadline, versus something that we make a priority, which is something, if you make your dreams a priority, that's when they turn into reality. So just know that if you continue to live this busy life, your dreams are being affected. In order for your dreams to turn into a reality, you have to make them a priority. So that commitment of being on the PTA, that commitment of being team mom, that commitment of being on another board at the hospital, a commitment of being on another committee, just because someone asked you, is it worth your dream? So just remember, I'm not preaching to you. I'm literally talking to myself, and hopefully this will help someone else. So just kind of to review what we've been talking about. So busyness is not necessarily because you're out doing bad things. Busyness is simply an overcommitment to doing too many good things. And if you're not, as you take on more commitments, it's very important to try to get rid of some other commitments. And it's also just like you need to get rid of, hoarder needs to get rid of things. A busy person needs to get rid of commitments so that you can have clarity, so that you can have focus, and so that you can achieve the level of success that you want to have. So my goal from this is to help develop an unbusy calendar, to try to declutter some of my days, so that I can continue to be productive, so that as I take on new tasks, I don't suffer and my family or my coworkers don't suffer due to my busyness. So as a leader, it's our responsibility to choose to get unbusy, because it affects the way that we lead, it affects the way that we interact with other people, and it affects our whole life and our health. So, what do you guys think? Did anyone say, man, this is me as well? If this episode brought you value, please reach out to me, give me feedback, let me know. One thing I forgot is that you can go to the website. I'm going to put the information about this Getting Unbusy book by Garland Vance in the show notes. He also has a Getting Unbusy book test that you can take. And I took that test, and it said that I'm a busyness addict, meaning that I'm addicted to overcommitting myself, and that I also place a lot of value on being busy. So like I mentioned, this is something that I'm really focused on, because I know to continue to be productive with some of the plans that I have in the near future, that I have to be more focused, and have more clarity on what's important.
Thank you for continuing to support this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then please leave a 5-star review. And if you haven't done so, subscribe so you continue to get the updated episodes. Until later, peace.
Hey, time out with the sports doctor. Keep our head right in the game. We ain't never stopping. You are now tuned in. Trust you don't want to miss